Hello, and welcome once again to another fun-filled, heretical episode of Inside the World of Mack's Headroom. Today I want to talk about what all other good YouTubers are talking about, and that is the Netflix release called Cuties. But, being the heretic that I am, and for some other reasons which I'll explain, I have some perhaps different perspectives than what seems to be the commentary narrative about this production. But I just finished watching it, so it's kind of hot off the press in my mind. But I was really kind of analyzing it because I knew there was all this controversy. Although, keep in mind, I really have not watched a whole version of somebody making commentary on it. The only thing I seem to be able to pick up is that there's all this, hubbub about the over-sexualization of children and perhaps what that could mean in terms of providing masturbatory stimulation to people that are perverted. So, that I kind of picked that up right away. Excuse me. I sort of picked that up right away. But that was about it going into the movie. Also, I should mention I tried watching it one time and got halfway through and I didn't really understand what was happening. And because I noticed that there was so much social media attention played to it, I said, well, I'm just going to give it a try. I'll force myself to get through it again. So I did. And I had some interesting things rose to the surface for me. And I want to share some of those things. I guess it's a bit heretical if I have a pulse on what people are saying real negatively about this. And I wouldn't disagree with any of that stuff. But I want to just put a little bit different spin on this. First of all, before I go on, let me say one thing about a trigger warning. No, I'm just kidding. It's no trigger warning. I just want to say that, Netflix, as I've said many times before in other videos, is very adept at lighting a fire under social media. Now, did they do it afterwards? I don't think so. I think the productions that they make are almost in advance known to predict how much reverberation is going to occur within social media. And perhaps the productions are even scaled to light that fire even more. I mean, to the degree that, if you look at the Tiger King narrative, I mean, no offense, bro, but there's a dude that is still running around trying to prove whether Carol Baskin killed her husband. I mean, we all don't know that. I mean, but it really, has generated, all this social media interest. Why? Well, I think the answer is obvious. It creates an influx of money because more people want to watch it. And more people might even want to watch it once or twice. I watched Tiger King a couple times when I got hooked into it. So, I mean, I think there's all kinds of things that Netflix does in a sensationalistic manner often, or sometimes by leaving information out, I've noticed too, will almost in a pre-planned way create this reverberation that occurs in social media. Well, it appears like this time they sort of got called out heavy because there's a bunch of people that say you've crossed the line. You're producing basically child pornography. You're providing information for groups, not information, you're providing stimuli for groups like MAPS and PI and whatever those groups are. And I don't know that I disagree with that. The only thing I do want to say, and I don't mean to be gross or nothing, but back in the day, before there was an internet, every single pedophilic person that I ever came in contact with, when you finally got them to kind of lay it all out, on the line, had a scrapbook of cutout pictures from the Sears catalog underwear section that he used for masturbatory stimulation. So my point is that Calvin Klein ads could be used for that, and I don't agree with Calvin Klein ads either. I mean, again, I don't want to, I don't want to normalize that, but just keep in mind that the people that are worried that this could be used for masturbatory stimulation or something like that. Someone of a deviant bent can use anything towards that end, and it might be your kids in a park while they're in a swimming pool. You know what I mean? So why am I going into all this? Because one, I want to say that Netflix has probably on purpose overlaid a lot of another narrative, which is the exploitation of children, like a hidden sort of, but it's not so hidden because people picked up on it real fast and it kind of blew up in their face, I think. But they kind of planted this hidden narrative that had to do with, children being exploited and children revealing themselves to a public audience in a way that perhaps they shouldn't be. And I'm not going to argue with any of that because I'm the same guy who would say, my ex-in-law who used to photograph suggestive pictures of her children and justified it because it was in sepia, so somehow it became artistic. It used to gross me out when I get a Christmas card like that. So, I mean, I don't justify any of this stuff. However, when understanding what Netflix does, then what happens is there's a fork in the road, and you have two narratives, actually, in this movie. One narrative is the narrative of kids flashing their butts and everybody getting upset about that, okay? And the second one, to me, is very, very deep and very cringy and very gripping. And I think one of the reasons I picked up on that is because, in another life, I was a family therapist. I was well trained. I used to train other people how to do family therapy. So, I mean, I could look at this, especially because I kind of knew going into it there was going to be all this hubbub schmutz that, was going to be, I kind of saw it coming. I was curious what this story was about because, as I mentioned, one time before I had tried to watch it and it was very hard to figure out, especially because it occurs in a culture that I'm really not very familiar with. So it has this surreal sort of element of like, where am I? What's going on here? I don't really understand. But it makes you very uncomfortable. So there is a secondary narrative. Like I said, one would be the narrative of, how right is it for kids to be flashing their butt and doing all that kind of stuff and blah, blah, blah. But the other narrative is a story about basically human development, child development, latency, and adolescence particularly. And not only that, but how a family adapts to a kid during that period, especially when there's a big problem going on. Okay? I mean, you could make it akin to like a bad divorce going on when a kid's 11 or 12 years old. Just as an analogy. So there's this theme that, has to do with this young girl who is in an oppressive sort of environment to begin with because she's into some deep religion. I thought it was Muslim. I couldn't really figure it out. But it's definitely very oppressive and very, fundamental. And she's not comfortable in it. And I got the impression she moves into a new area and, is not liking what's going on. And then all of a sudden, and I should explain, one of the things that's going on in the background with this young girl and her life is that her father is taking on a second wife who I believe is going to live in the family's dwelling as well. And she is expected to go to her father's wedding and look all happy. Now, that's kind of what I got out of it. You can put your comments in the comment section below if you think that, I don't have this right. But that's what I took away from it. And if you start to look at this, again, through a more psychological lens, what you see is like considered one of the hallmarks of actually completing adolescence, which is called individuation. It's where a kid has pulled psychologically away enough from their family to sort of take some of what their parents gave to them and incorporate that into their personality, and then have created perhaps other things that are of value to themselves to become part of their personality, and then those two merge so that the past is not left totally behind, hopefully if it's a good environment, and the kid can individuate and become its own person. And that's exactly what goes on when you start to get past all the sexualization stuff in this story, is that this young girl is really struggling to figure out who she is, especially in an environment that's oppressive on the one hand, which is antithetical to entering adolescence. To be in an oppressive environment doesn't usually work very well. And also that there's a big problem. She's expected to believe that everything's okay, and she should go to this wedding and don a dress which is reflective of this culture that she's struggling to separate from anyway. She's not liking it. And in the meantime, the mother is supposed to be accepting this as, I guess, part of a cultural variant. And she's not doing so well because she's having what you call conversion reactions. That means like when you just pass out of nowhere because of no reason, apparently. It's built up stress usually. But, I mean, you just kind of pass out or you become, stiff or something like that. So this mother's having conversion reactions, falling on the floor out of nowhere. And this girl's in the middle of all this stuff. And she's supposed to make it like everything's okay. So what happens? What does she find to help her pull away from this dysfunctional, oppressive family system? She finds a peer group. I mean, come on. All you got to do is watch a couple of things on adolescence and the importance or the dread, of the peer group. And, you know that that's what the Cuties are all about. I mean, you could get lost again. You can get lost in the sexualization that you see and start getting mortified and reactive and not see that this is a group of kids who are outsiders themselves. So, and this girl is kind of an outsider, but she's a conservative outsider, and they're kind of like already in the acting out stage. But I mean, nobody could tell me those girls didn't have some problems. You never see them associated with a family ever. That one girl that has the little round glasses and like the stripes in her hair, colored stripes. I mean, tell me she doesn't have an anger problem. Oh my God. I mean, when she slapped that girl around in the movie, I thought, well, that was pretty intense. But I saw her give some looks that, one, made me think she was a great actor. But second of all, this is a pissed off young lady that's ready to explode. So this girl finds a peer group to identify with, and they kind of slowly work her in, right? And then she becomes kind of the opposite of what her family would expect her to be, which is what happens in a family that goes haywire like this one's going. You see? To me, it's quite a drama. And, the question of when she took, I don't know what you'd call the dick pic, of herself and then broadcasted it. I mean, was that really her? I mean, I don't think so. I think she was really going way against her morals at that point that she herself had inside. But was it the effect of the peer group? Which is, a classic sort of dilemma, especially for a kid who's in turbulence in a period when they should be in relative calm, because most of it takes place right before adolescence until you see that dramatic scene where she has her first menstruation, and that tells you she's 13. And, I mean, was that necessary? See, I don't know. Was it necessary or was it not? One of the questions I've walked away with from seeing this movie is, would this be the same movie without the sexualization as with, instead of, with it? Would it work without it? Would it be that interesting a story? I happen to think it would be. I think it's a beautiful, tender story. And, the ending, I think, epitomizes, if you can get past your reactivity to the over-sexualization of kids, the ending, to me, in terms of this thing I was talking about, individuation, is beautiful because what happens after her mother overreacts and slaps her around and the grandmother tries to put a voodoo spell on her and all this crazy stuff and she's going crazy, how does it really end? It ends in like the way that every sex abuse incest survivor would love to have an ending happen to them. Not that I'm saying this girl's an incest survivor. I'm just using it as a frame of reference. And that is that the mother protects her. The mother comes in and says to the voodoo lady, the grandmother, stop it, leave her alone, which is a major thing to do, I gain, in that culture. To say that to this, I don't know, this hierarchically superior woman, I think that's probably pretty hard. So the mother, at the time that they're supposed to get ready to go to the father's wedding, which the mother's passing out over but acting like everything's okay, and the girl's supposed to act like everything is okay. I mean, isn't that quite a drama? I find it so. And what happens is at the end, I hope it doesn't ruin it for anybody, but the mother comes in to protect the child by saying, one, voodoo lady, leave her alone, and two, by not making her go to the wedding. It's a touching moment, in my opinion. I mean, I'm in control of myself. I started to cry during that part. It just, after all this chaos and stuff, if you can strip off the over-sexualization part and just look at the drama of this story, the girl is protected by her mom. She backs off the voodoo lady. She doesn't have to go to the wedding. And then what happens? It's such a tender ending. The girl changes clothes, and she wears clothes that aren't like the slut wear that she was wearing when she was with the Cuties, but it isn't exactly the village attire or definitely her religious attire either. It's kind of in between. And she does something with her hair that just makes her look, I think, age appropriate. It seemed that way, maybe a little overdone, but I thought, what it was she was coming to the middle, which is what you want to see. Like in a happy ending, in a situation like this, you'd want to see that this girl's coming to the middle. Then what does she do at the very end? She plays jump rope with her neighbors, which means she's come home. She's not going to be in the Cuties or in the craziness out there anymore, but she's also going to be herself because she's dressed differently than her mother would want her to do. And she's playing jump rope, which means she can go back to being a kid with her neighbors in her community, but yet she can be herself. To me, that's a very deep, involved, tender narrative, and far overrides the element of the sexualization of kids. And I think that, for myself, anything that was like cringeworthy, I guess you could call it, didn't have to do with the girls and stuff, because I've seen that same kind of shit on Calvin Klein on the side of the buses, or my ex-in-law, seriously, used to do that and put it on Christmas cards. I mean, I don't know. I suppose people will disagree with me. I'm not in disagreement with the people say that maybe that shouldn't happen. So I don't want to be saying that I'm some sort of sympathizer with this if people feel different than me, but I don't know that I feel differently from the people who are kind of hung up on the over-sexualization part. I don't disagree with you about that. It was overdone. Was it necessary? I'm not sure. That has to do with artistic license, and I don't know what the narrative would look like, but I do know that the narrative, the secondary narrative, that of the story of the development of a kid going from puberty to adolescence in a troubled family, and the role of the peer group in that, and this happy ending where she comes back to her community and is a different person than the rest, is a very happy ending to a pretty deep story. And so, that's about it. I guess, I hope that anybody watching it, will be able to get past some of that. If you can't get past it, then don't, because, it's a sensitive, touchy area. But I found once knowing that was going to happen, and then I know Netflix is famous for that shit, I just, sort of was prepared, and it didn't really override this very deep, heavy drama. And with that, I bid you adieu. So, see, I didn't cry. So thank you once again for being with me in another episode of Inside the World of Mack's Headroom. Oh God, I can't believe it. I finally made it through this. I did the wrong sign-off sign. Okay, I'll try it again. Thank you once again for being with me with another episode of Inside the World of Mack's Headroom. Yeah. Bye.